A boy started sweating nervously when he opened his room door and saw a goddess kneeling in front of him. He was shocked and didn't know what to say. This story took place in Orakia, a large land made up of 5 different countries. About 50 years earlier, the Toskabolk Empire brought all of them together and ruled as one. Orakia was home to many kinds of people: humans, elves, beastfolk, dwarves, and halflings. But the land was also full of dangerous creatures called monsters. Cities stayed safe because of a magical shield called the Barrier Against Monsters, given by the goddess. But villages and towns outside the cities didn't have this protection, so they were often attacked by monsters. To fight back, some people received a special gift from the goddess called the Leveling Blessing. These people became known as adventurers. As they gained more experience, they leveled up, grew stronger, and got better at fighting monsters. They also learned spells and special skills. Their main goal was to protect the world and serve the goddess. The same group of adventurers was fighting a bunch of monkey-like monsters. One of them, a woman with rabbit ears named Rhea, swung her hammer and used her skill called Rabbit Strike to smash a mortar. She quickly made a rice cake, then pulled it apart to create 2 glowing orbs that could heal people. Rhea picked up the orbs and asked Leo for help. But another adventurer named Leonora, who looked proud and full of herself, said she was already tired. Rhea quietly agreed and said sorry. After hearing this, another adventurer named Tint walked over to Leonora. He asked her to carry Rhea's healing orbs for both of them. Leonora gave him an angry look and asked why she should follow what he said. She told Tint to carry them himself, especially since he hadn't been helpful at all. Tint said the healing magic would work on him if he touched the orbs. Leonora called him useless and dumb. Then she pulled out a whip and used it to hit the healing orbs. This activated her skill called Queen's Telekinesis. The orbs floated toward 2 other teammates who were fighting on the front lines, but the orbs only went to one person, the handsome adventurer named Savant. A small adventurer named Trisso asked for his share of healing, but Leonora said he was too short and it was hard to aim at him. She also said he should be able to handle the monkeys on his own. She only cheered for Savant. Savant then walked up to a huge white monkey all by himself. He didn't look scared at all. He swung his sword and cut the monster. As the monster dropped to its knees, Savant stepped back and used his wind magic, blowing in the wind to launch himself forward. He pierced the monster with a cool and powerful move. His attack even blew away the other monsters nearby. Tint was amazed. He couldn't believe how Savant defeated all the monsters with just one strike. He called him impressive. However, Tint saw that a monster was still moving behind Savant. He was shocked and wondered how it was still standing after Savant's powerful attack. He remembered that Savant's move, blowing in the wind, used wind to move at an incredible speed and stop at a set point. It was so fast that normal people couldn't match it. But after using it, Savant couldn't move for a short time. To protect himself during that moment, he created a burst of wind around him to push enemies away. This meant that if an enemy could resist the wind, they had a chance to attack Savant while he was unable to move. Tint tried to help, but the wind pressure made it hard for him to get close. Savant couldn't defend himself as he watched the monster throw a punch at him. Luckily, Tint arrived just in time and used his small shield to block the monster's attack. But the shield wasn't strong enough. The force of the hit sent Tint flying into a tree, injuring him badly. As he hit the ground, he saw the monster fall too. It looked like the monster couldn't move anymore after using its last bit of strength. Even though Tint was hurt, he didn't think about himself. He checked if Savant was okay. Savant walked over to Tint and broke his shield. That shield was a family heirloom from Tint's father. Then Savant looked down at him and said that surviving with such a weak shield was good enough to call it graduation. As Tint tried to stand up, Savant told him he was being kicked out of the party. He reminded Tint that he had given an order to protect Rhea and Leonora, but Tint disobeyed it. Tint said he only stepped in because he thought Savant was in real danger. Savant told him not to underestimate his strength. Even if he couldn't move for a few seconds, he claimed he could have dodged the attack because of his move called Elegant Slash, which made it easier to avoid danger. He said Tint had been reckless, disobeyed orders, and put everyone in danger. He said this kind of behavior risked the safety of the team. Tint apologized and said he'd be more careful next time, but Savant didn't change his mind. He clearly said that Tint was no longer part of the team. Just then, Trisso showed up and jokingly told them to leave before things got worse. Savant seemed a bit caught off guard by Trisso's comment. When Tint asked why, Savant admitted that they had received an invitation to join Saffron, the leader of a group called the Garden of Diversity. Tint was surprised. The Garden of Diversity was known as one of the top adventurer teams, officially ranked S-class by the guild. The team included people from many different races, with both famous heroes and young adventurers full of potential. One of the most well-known members was Aitana, the daughter of the hero Bernhardt, who was part of Saffron's team. Tint thought it was amazing. Savant agreed, but pointed out that this didn't include Tint. Merging teams wasn't rare. but Tint knew that Saffron wanted to remove him before the teams combined. Savant said Tint had no reason to complain because in every fight, Tint never gained experience. His level stayed at 0. Savant even called him God's enemy, and said that someone like that could never belong in an S-class team. Later, in a poor part of the adventurer city called Ligia, Tint walked home by himself, still hurting from the battle earlier. He wanted to visit a healer, but he didn't have any money. His team didn't even try to help him. Since he was already leaving the group, they told him to just go home like that. That was when Tint fully realized he had really been kicked out. The rewards he earned before were tiny compared to what the others got. His daily life was already tough, and now it just got worse. He told himself he needed to work harder to survive, but he didn't even know what kind of job he could do. He wondered if he could still keep going as an adventurer. He felt foolish. He had started as an adventurer when he was 13, and for 3 years he thought he was trying his best. But even after all that time, he was still level 0. People called him God's enemy. Almost everyone in Ligia, the city known for its adventurers, had heard of him. In this city, the Adventurers Guild held a special ceremony called the Ritual of the Floral Crown. During this ritual, the goddess Esther gave adventurers the leveling blessing. This blessing allowed people to grow stronger and fight monsters. But Tint never got that blessing. No matter how many monsters he fought, he never gained experience. He stayed at level 0. It felt like the goddess had turned her back on him. That's why people said the nickname God's enemy fit him. The guild didn't like it when level 0 adventurers took on jobs alone. They might even ask him to quit. But Tint didn't want to give up. He just felt forgotten by the goddess and didn't know what to do next. When he finally reached his old broken house, he let out a deep sigh. He decided to rest for now and think about everything the next day. But as he opened the door, he froze. There, sitting quietly inside his house, was a beautiful girl. Meeting this mysterious goddess changed everything. This moment was the beginning of Tint's real story. Even though it was his first time meeting the woman, Tint already knew who she was. She was the mother goddess of all people, Goddess Esther. Esther stood up without saying a word and walked toward him. Tint started to sweat nervously. He remembered his nickname, God's enemy, because even though the gods had given him blessings, he still couldn't level up. He believed there could only be one reason why the goddess herself showed up. She was there to judge him. Tint thought she was going to kill him. So without wasting time, he got on his knees and asked for forgiveness. He believed he was going to die, but he felt like it wouldn't be so bad if it was the goddess who did it. He accepted it and wasn't even sad. Tint tried to say sorry, but something surprising happened. Esther suddenly knelt on the ground and bowed deeply to him. Tint was shocked and didn't know what to think. He nervously asked her to lift her head, but Esther said she had made a big mistake and begged to stay like that. Tint told her he didn't understand what was going on. He asked her again to raise her head and explain. Finally, Esther calmed down and said sorry. She introduced herself properly as Goddess Esther from the Corporation Black God, the one in charge of managing the world. She explained that one of her jobs was to give the leveling blessing to adventurers who were 13 or older through something called the Ritual of the Floral Crown. She guessed that Tint had already been told about it when he turned 13. Tint said yes, but he was even more confused now. To him, the idea that being a goddess was just a job sounded strange. Esther admitted that she didn't know why the blessing didn't work properly on Tint and that something had gone wrong. She also said that it had been 3 years since Tint became an adventurer, but he hadn't gained a single level. Esther said it was completely her fault and got down on her knees again to say sorry. Tint was surprised to see a goddess bowing to him, but then he realized that she didn't hate him at all. Esther said she didn't hate him. She said she understood how he felt, and even if he forgave her, she knew she couldn't take away the pain he went through during those 3 years. She believed he wouldn't be able to truly forgive her. To her surprise, Tint forgave her right away. Esther was shocked and didn't understand how he could do that. Tint said those 3 years felt like torture, but since the goddess came to say sorry in person, it would be rude not to forgive her. He also said he was sorry for using a strong word like forgive toward her. Esther was so surprised that she couldn't say anything. Tint asked if something was wrong. Then, without warning, Esther ran to him and hugged him tightly. She cried a lot and said it was the first time someone had ever forgiven her. She thanked Tint while crying. After some time, she calmed down. Esther helped Tint change his pants because they were soaked with tears and drool. Tint said he was okay. Esther felt grateful that he had forgiven her so easily, but she said she couldn't go home in that state. Tint asked if he had done something wrong. Esther said it was actually the opposite. She brought up how Tint had stayed at level 0 as an adventurer for 3 years. She thought that must have been really hard on him. This time, she promised to make sure Tint would finally level up the right way. Tint was confused, so Esther explained it clearly. He would start gaining levels from now on. But Esther believed that just leveling up wouldn't make up for everything he had missed. So she said she would give him 100 times the experience points he should have earned during the past 3 years. Tint was shocked. Esther even wondered if that wasn't enough and offered 1,000 times instead. But Tint quickly accepted the 100 times reward. Esther looked proud. Then she asked for a hug. Tint got nervous because he didn't want to get too close, but Esther said the hug wasn't about being lonely or needing comfort. It was part of giving the experience points. She even cried, asking not to be misunderstood. Tint told her he wasn't thinking anything bad. Esther opened her arms, and this time Tint gave her a hug without holding back. She said it was the beginning of the process. But as they hugged, Tint struggled to focus because of how close she was. Right after Esther activated something, Tint suddenly felt a strange change. At the same time, he heard a sound that told him he had leveled up. He was happy to see that he had reached level 2, but before he could even enjoy it, he leveled up again and reached level 3. The level up sounds kept going and they started to feel too loud. Although gaining levels was a good thing, the constant noise was too much for him. It didn't stop and he felt like he was losing his mind. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore and shouted in pain. The next morning, Tint woke up in his bed with a terrible headache. He remembered the visit from the goddess and how he had leveled up. He tried to get out of bed to get some water, but instead of stepping on the floor, he accidentally stepped on Esther's face. Shocked, he yelled. Esther woke up quickly. At first she thought she was in trouble, but then she realized Tint had just woken up. Tint said sorry for stepping on her. Esther said it was okay and explained she was used to sleeping on the floor. She said it happened often. People would wake up, think she was the floor, and step on her. She also told Tint that she hadn't noticed when he passed out during the ritual. She had kept sending experience points without realizing it. Then, she shared something personal. It wasn't because she wanted a longer hug. She had never hugged anyone before and just wanted to make a special memory. Esther took a moment to calm down and asked Tint to check for himself if he had received the experience. Since he had fainted, the goddess couldn't check his status on her own. Tint then opened his status window while holding a book. The blessing book showed that someone had passed the ritual of the floral crown. It was also used by the guild to check a person's level and skills. Tint froze when he saw that he was now level 2198. His stats were all over the place, but they were extremely powerful. Even though he didn't have any magic yet, he had a skill called the One Who Endures, and it was already at its highest level. At first, he didn't understand what he was reading. Then he suddenly shouted in surprise. In the background, Esther seemed proud of what had happened. Tint was shocked when he saw that his level had reached 2198. He thought this was impossible because, according to rumors, the legendary hero Bernhardt was only around level 300. People believed that having a level in the thousands just couldn't happen. His stats also looked strange. The numbers were so high that they could beat even the strongest demons without needing help from magic monsters or dragons. Even his skill called the One Who Endures, which seemed useless, had somehow reached its highest level. Tint couldn't understand what was happening. Esther looked at the blessing book and felt happy. Tint had finally leveled up the right way. Tint, still confused, said that his stats looked weird. He believed that even if his experience was multiplied by 100, he still shouldn't be at such a high level. In his group, the strongest member was Savant, who was only level 40, and he could already defeat most monsters. So it didn't make sense for Tint to be in the 2000s even with 100 times more experience. But Esther explained that it wasn't that simple. In their world, leveling up got harder the higher you went. The amount of experience needed stayed at 100 points, but the person's level changed, which determined how much experience they got from monsters. For example, if a level 1 and a level 100 adventurer fought the same monster, the level 1 would gain more experience. That's why it was easier to go from level 1 to 2 than from level 100 to 101. Esther also reminded Tint that he had been level 0 all this time, even while fighting really strong monsters. So when he finally gained experience, it all added up at once. Based on this, and if you multiplied the experience by 100, then his level being around 2000 actually made sense. Esther looked at Tint with a hopeful expression, even though she had dark circles under her eyes from working too much. Tint looked at her for a moment, then knelt down and told her how thankful he was. Esther felt embarrassed and said there was no need to thank her because it had all been her fault from the beginning. But Tint said that since Esther was a goddess, anything she chose to do had to be right. Esther felt a mix of emotions, so she thanked Tint and also apologized. After that, they both sat in silence. It felt a little awkward. Tint wondered why Esther wasn't leaving yet. He had already checked his status, and he thought that someone like Esther must be busy and should have gone back to the heavens by now. Just then, Esther's stomach growled loudly. She said sorry and explained she hadn't eaten since lunch the day before. Tint was surprised to learn that even goddesses needed to eat. He asked what she had eaten, and Esther said she had some herbs. When he asked if she meant the herbs he knew, she said yes. She explained that she saw some green plants growing from the ground and thought they were herbs. Tint was shocked. He couldn't believe that even a goddess like Esther wasn't eating well. Still, he assumed that the herbs she found must have been some kind of special heavenly herbs. probably much tastier than anything found on Earth. He also thought goddesses wouldn't normally eat ordinary food, so it didn't seem possible. Even so, Tint offered to make her breakfast as a way to say thank you. He actually hoped she would say no, but to his surprise, Esther said yes. His plan to get her to go home didn't work. Tint rushed to the kitchen because he didn't want to keep a goddess waiting, but when he looked around, he only had jerky and bread. So he decided to make a simple sandwich. He picked up his old knife but noticed it was dull, so he tried to sharpen it with a whetstone. As he started, something strange happened. The knife suddenly flew out of his hand and got stuck in the wall. At the same time, the whetstone broke into pieces even though it was supposed to be super hard. That's when Tint remembered that his strength had grown a lot. It was so strong that it didn't show until he used a certain amount of force. Somehow he had gone past that limit. The numbers showing his strength were hard to believe, but feeling it for himself was even scarier. He went back to Esther with the sandwich, which looked a bit messy. He had pulled the knife out of the wall and carefully used it to cut the jerky and bread. Esther looked at the sandwich quietly, and Tint apologized because he thought it wasn't good enough for a goddess. To his surprise, Esther ate it without saying anything at first. Her eyes were teary, and she said it had a nice salty taste. Tint, still confused, asked if she really meant it. Esther thanked him and said it was delicious. She also said sorry for eating everything, but Tint didn't mind. He couldn't eat anything in his current state anyway. After eating, Esther asked what Tint planned to do next. Just the day before, Tint was unsure if he should find a regular job or keep working as an adventurer. But now, with his new strength, a normal job wasn't an option. To get used to his power, he decided to take on a quest in the Goblin Forest. With his abilities, he could keep working alone. He had always wanted to be an adventurer, but he never imagined it would turn out like this. For now, he had to learn how to control his strength, or it would get in the way of his everyday life. Esther agreed that the plan sounded okay and said Tint needed to get used to a few things first. She had 2 requests. First, she wanted him to hide his true power so that no one would notice. She explained that she was saying sorry on her own because her company, which often took advantage of others, usually covered up their mistakes. If she told her bosses, they would simply say there was no adventurer named Tint, and that would be the end of it. Tint understood what she meant. If the people from the heavens really wanted to, they could erase all proof that he ever existed. Esther said she felt bad because coming down from heaven like this was not allowed. It was also against the rules to show her real identity. If Tint suddenly became the best adventurer even though he was just level 0 the day before, and if anyone found out she gave him 100 times more experience points, she would be in big trouble. Her lazy co-workers would get suspicious and blame her, so her first request was for Tint to act like he was getting stronger little by little. Not all at once. Tint got it. It made sense. No regular person could become that strong so fast, and people would definitely start asking questions. Her second request was to go with him to the Goblin Forest. Esther was worried. She wanted to make sure Tint could control his new strength. If he lost control, she wanted to be there to stop him. Tint didn't want to waste her time, but Esther told him not to worry. She said she took a vacation from work. She had been working non-stop for 100 years, so she took 3 weeks off. Hearing that made Tint wonder what kind of place the heavens really were. Esther complained that Tint didn't seem happy about her coming along. She said she felt excited because it was the first time a man was being kind to her. She also mentioned that she was used to being alone. Tint said that wasn't true. He explained that he acted that way because she was very beautiful. Even someone like him, who wasn't very smart, could easily tell that Esther looked like a goddess. He said if she walked outside, people would definitely notice her. Esther said that wouldn't be a problem. She pulled something out from between her chest like she was Doraemon and told him to wait for a moment. Tin wondered what that black tablet was. Esther tapped on her smartphone a few times and said that she had now lowered her divine presence to 0. After that, she said people wouldn't see her as a goddess anymore. Tint agreed because he no longer felt the same pressure from her as before. It even seemed like she now carried a bit of bad luck or misfortune. Strangely, he felt more drawn to her. Then, Esther asked if she could stay with him for a while. Tint said yes right away and Esther looked happy. Our young protagonist was fortunate enough to live with a beautiful girl at the young age of 16, unlike our dear viewers who are still single and living alone. Later, the two of them went to the guild. As they walked in, Trisso noticed them. Before this, Tint had bought a plain cloak for Esther. It was something simple, but it was enough for people to recognize her as the goddess Esther. After buying it, he didn't have any money left. Even so, he promised himself that he would do his best so that Esther wouldn't have to suffer. They both went to the Adventurers Guild. Esther thought the place looked amazing. Tint felt a bit better seeing her happy because he hadn't really wanted her to come there in the first place. When the other adventurers saw Tint walk in, many of them were surprised. Some even wondered if he came just to be laughed at. Esther quietly hid behind him. Then Trisso began teasing Tint. He said Tint had forgotten about their team and had already teamed up with someone new. He even called Tint their old star, clearly trying to make fun of him. Tint realized Trisso had already told stories about him to the others. Staying calm, Tint asked if Trisso didn't have a mission today. Trisso said it was his day off and also mentioned that Ria was on a date with someone named Savant. Tint just replied that he understood and walked away without showing any emotion. This surprised Trisso. Trisso then turned to Esther and warned her not to join Tint. He said Tint was the god's enemy and that even the goddess would hate her if she followed him. Esther looked shaken by this, and Tint noticed she was feeling guilty. What Trisso didn't know was that he was talking to the goddess herself. Tint explained that the woman with him wasn't an adventurer and asked Trisso to stop bothering them, since he only came to take on a quest. Trisso looked confused for a moment. Then others around them started laughing. Trisso said he thought Tint came to announce he was quitting. He asked if Tint was really sure about staying an adventurer. Though he called Tint their team's star, he admitted he was only joking. He said Tint was funny. Tint quietly told Esther that they would be leaving soon. Then he picked a quest from the board and gave it to the receptionist. She mentioned that she had heard about his removal from the guild and said she was sorry about what happened. Tint said it didn't bother him and asked if he could take quests alone. The receptionist asked if he was sure. Tint said yes. She didn't really want him to go solo and asked if he had a partner. Tint said he would be fine by himself. He couldn't ask Esther, who was known as the mother of all adventurers, to become one herself. The receptionist apologized again, saying that because of his current level, solo quests were not allowed. Tint asked if even goblin extermination was off limits, and she said yes. He found it frustrating. He just wanted to take down goblins. He had been an adventurer for 3 years and felt confident enough to handle at least that, even if he was still level 0. Since he couldn't take a quest, Tint decided to go to Goblin Forest anyway. He thought collecting goblin parts could still earn him some money. Just then, the receptionist suggested something else. She said she had a different kind of job for him and seemed excited. She mentioned that a friend of hers ran a women's entertainment business and offered to send him there for an interview right away. In the city of Lygia, where adventurers were abundant, the adult entertainment business is very popular. Tint knew too well that he was not cut out for that kind of thing, and hoped she would stop talking about that thing in front of the goddess. However, the receptionist refused to back down as she knew that Tint was hiding a monster under these tight pants. He was worried that such crude words were entering the ears of the goddess. But Esther herself got her eyes locked on Tint's pants with curiosity. Trisso told the receptionist to calm down and asked her to give Tint a chance, even though the gods didn't like him. The receptionist, clearly annoyed, said Tint was only good at being a gigolo. Trisso didn't hear everything and asked what she meant. Tint quickly said it was just about the quest. Still, the receptionist didn't want to let Tint go alone. To everyone's surprise, Trisso offered to join him. The receptionist finally gave up on her hopes of seeing Tint's pet anaconda and handed over the quest. Later, Tint and Esther walked into the Goblin Forest. Not long ago, Tint had thanked Trisso for saving him, but Trisso told him not to follow him around. Trisso agreed to this because he didn't want to watch a former teammate get killed by a weak goblin. It would just make him feel guilty. Knowing the kind of person Trisso was, Tint wasn't surprised. While walking, Tint saw Esther looking around with wide eyes like a curious child. She got embarrassed and pulled her cloak tighter around herself. Tint realized he had made her uncomfortable, so he quickly changed the topic. He said the forest looked amazing and guessed that the goddess must have created it. He explained how she once made a magic barrier to keep monsters away, which is why the monsters near the city of Lygia were weak. That barrier was created hundreds of years ago. It was known that goddess Esther placed strong protective barriers around the main cities of the continent. Ever since then, monsters have been unable to enter those cities. The barrier also affected the areas nearby. The farther monsters were from the barrier, the stronger they became. Because the Goblin Forest was close to Lygia, only weak F-ranked monsters lived there. This made the area a good place for beginner adventurers to train and earn money safely. However, since Tint was still level 0, hunting alone was still risky for him. Esther finally remembered how she had set up the protective barriers. At that time, demons were attacking and she believed humanity might not survive. Tint said it was because of her that people could now live safely, but Esther said it wasn't a big deal. She had to keep watching the field system because it was complex. Since she had built the system, she was given full control of it. Because of that, she hadn't been able to sleep well ever since. Tint realized he might have upset her. Just then, as he was hoping to see a goblin or a dragon, a goblin appeared from the bushes. Tint quickly told Esther to step back because goblins with weapons could be dangerous. But when the goblin stepped out, Esther was shocked. She angrily asked why the goblin wasn't wearing any clothes. Tint told her not to look and figured the receptionist from earlier might have given her the wrong impression. He calmly explained that it was normal for monsters to look like that. Esther couldn't believe that was considered normal. She complained about how the monster development department acted like this world was part of a hentai manga. She clung to Tint, shaking, and said she was scared that the goblin might pounce on her. But Tint had never heard of a monster harassing humans like that before. He told her to calm down and stay back as the goblin charged at them with an axe. The goblin swung its weapon quickly, but for some reason Tint felt like it was moving too slowly. He easily stepped aside. He remembered that goblins used to be faster. When the goblin's axe got stuck, Tint took the chance to hit its head with his hand to knock it out. But something went wrong. His strike went straight through the goblin's head and split its whole body in half. When he saw what he had done, Tint realized how disturbing it looked. He also realized it was too late to hide it. Esther had already seen everything and looked disgusted. He tried to explain that he didn't mean to use so much force, but then he accidentally got blood on her back with his hand. Suddenly, 3 more goblins appeared, also without clothes. Esther froze in place, disgusted, and asked why there were so many of them. A loud sound echoed through the forest, and Esther was caught off guard. She stumbled and fell near a tree. Meanwhile, Tint had finally learned how to control his strength. This was clear because the goblin in front of him remained unharmed after he tapped it on the forehead. He felt proud that he was starting to understand how his new powers worked. But before this moment, he had accidentally gone too far with his strength. He had already tested it on 2 other goblins. One ended up with a crushed head, and the other had been beheaded. These accidents had left behind 2 unpleasant scenes. Even though it was messy, his skill level improved, which showed he was learning more quickly. Now that he had gotten the hang of it, his next concern was Esther's health. He told her they should wrap things up and head back home. But just then, Esther noticed something. There was blood on the tree where she had fallen. When she touched her back and saw the blood, she panicked. Tint realized the situation was serious. Esther started to worry that she might be badly hurt. Tint felt responsible and thought she would blame him. She asked if she was dying, clearly scared. Tint tried to calm her down and said she looked fine. Still, he was worried. Although she looked human, she might still suffer from blood loss just like any other person. Esther began crying loudly. She didn't want to die and mentioned she hadn't enjoyed life to the fullest yet. Tint quickly told her it wasn't her blood, it was from the goblins. But Esther wasn't convinced. She said her last health exam showed poor results and that it was a miracle she had lived this long. Seeing her panic, Tint knew he had to distract her. He tried to show her the unconscious goblin he had knocked out without hurting it. But the sight of the goblin's exposed body made things worse. Esther was disgusted and the distraction failed. Tint reminded her that the goblin's appearance wasn't the point of the discussion. Esther thought she was dying and started asking Tint for something. Tint told her again that she wasn't dying, but she didn't listen. She went on about how she had never been with a man or seen a naked man in person. Tint said that part was great for someone like her. Esther agreed that it was good for a goddess, but as a woman she wanted to experience that before she died. Then she pulled out her smartphone and asked Tint to show her what he was hiding under his pants. Tint felt confused and asked what Esther meant. He told her to calm down, saying she wasn't in danger and he wouldn't do anything to her. But Esther seemed disappointed and made a sound with her tongue. Tint noticed she wasn't paying attention to him at all. Suddenly, Esther used her divine power and took on her full goddess mode. She brought her hands together and ordered Tint to reveal his third leg, using her goddess powers. Tint was shocked to find that his body was moving without his control. He had already started to take off his pants before he could stop himself. He told Esther that this wasn't right, but she was already looking at him with excitement. Feeling helpless, Tint unconsciously asked if there were any other goddesses who could help him. But he was already too late to say a prayer. His friend had already been shown to the goddess. Esther was surprised and thought something strange was going on. She started to worry and wondered why it looked so big. Tint felt awkward after hearing that. Earlier, after he had finished a mission with Savant and Trisso, he was in the bathroom when Trisso made a comment that Tint's friend was the size of his face. That comment stuck with Tint and made him feel really insecure. He told Esther that it was just normal-sized. Esther was surprised to hear that and became nervous, thinking it might not fit inside her. Tint asked her not to say things like that, especially since she was a goddess. Esther said it would grow larger when awake and tried to measure it on her own body. Tint got upset and asked what kind of things she had been reading. Esther blushed from what she imagined and then dropped to the ground, saying she couldn't handle it. Just thinking about it scared her. Tint couldn't believe he made a goddess faint with his anaconda. It was going too far, but he shouldn't regret this. Later at the guild, the receptionist praised Tint for defeating 50 goblins all by himself. After the goddess fainted, even more goblins showed up, so Tint ended up fighting more than he had planned. He brought back some valuable items like goblin claws, which were rare and sold for a good price. He also found some precious metals that the goblins probably stole from other adventurers. With the money he got from the quest and selling the items, Tint didn't have to worry about money for a while. The quest was recorded in the blessing book once it was accepted, and the book kept track of everything. Anyone could check the quest details anytime, and the number of goblins defeated was counted automatically. Because of this, no one could lie about how many goblins they had taken down. Everyone noticed Tint. He used to be a low-level adventurer, but now he had defeated 50 goblins in one mission. The book's tracking feature was useful but also a little annoying because it showed everything clearly. The receptionist felt a bit disappointed because her plan to make Tint a gigolo would have to wait. She asked about his partner. Tint simply said they went separate ways. He explained that Esther fainted and was now resting at home. Even though she had passed out, her divine energy was still strong enough for others to feel. But thanks to his high stats, Tint managed to get her home without anyone seeing. Still, he felt uneasy about leaving her alone. Tint nervously asked if he had already proven that he could handle goblins by himself. The receptionist wanted to know if Tint really did the job alone. Tint said yes, but Trisso quickly stepped in and told the receptionist not to believe him too easily. Trisso claimed that he was the one who beat the goblins while Tint just stood and watched, so he said the reward should go to him. Tint told him not to lie, but Trisso asked what part was a lie, saying someone at level 0 couldn't possibly defeat goblins. Tint explained that he had been fighting at the bottom of a cliff when a rock slide suddenly happened and wiped out all the goblins at once. Trisso argued that the rock slide had nothing to do with Tint's skills, so he thought it was fair for someone else to get the reward. Tint pointed out that Trisso was just trying to take the reward and all the credit. People nearby laughed at the argument. Trisso then said that if it weren't for him, Tint wouldn't have even gotten the extermination job, so it made sense for him to get the reward. Tint offered to split it evenly, but Trisso shouted that the goddess would cry if someone like Tint, called a god's enemy, made money as an adventurer. He insisted that the reward should go to him. Tint told Trisso to stop trying so hard, especially since he could barely beat a single goblin himself. He told him to stop being jealous. Trisso got angry and pulled out his knives. He suggested a game to settle things. Instead of fighting, he wanted a knife-throwing contest. Everyone liked the idea and cheered. Trisso explained how the game worked. They would throw knives and earn points. The one with the highest score would win the prize. Tint knew Trisso was very good at throwing knives. It was just like him to pick a game he was already good at. Trisso made fun of Tint, asking if the hero who beat the goblins was now scared. Tint sighed and agreed to play. Since they didn't have much time, Tint suggested doing 8 throws. Trisso said 5 was enough and joked that Tint must be hoping to get lucky. Tint accepted his terms. Trisso then said the game was set and asked who would win this time. People quickly ran off to place their bets. Tint knew most of them would bet on Trisso. Quietly, he went to the receptionist and asked her to bet on him. He wanted the one person who had been kind to him to gain something from this. Trisso told Tint to start. Tint didn't really know all the rules. He only knew that hitting the target gave points, and sometimes points could double or triple. He was also bad at math, and if he messed up counting his score, he might lose everything. If he hit the center every time, it might draw too much attention. Still, he made up his mind. He would play the game and win. After that, Trisso slammed his beer mug on the table. He couldn't believe that Tint had beaten him at his own game. He started to worry that Tint might tell everyone about his loss. For Trisso, that would be very embarrassing. Another halfling asked why Trisso was so upset. Trisso said it was only natural to get mad when someone took his reward, but his friend said it wasn't really taken, since Trisso had been with them the whole time while Tint was out on a quest. At first, they all thought Tint wasn't that good, but now his friends saw him differently. Trisso asked what was so special about Tint. His friend said it was the fact that someone at level 0 could beat 50 goblins. When they were level 0, even one goblin was hard to beat. Trisso said that Tint just used a rock slide to win. Still, his friend thought that was clever. Halflings like them often use their brains to fight goblins too. But then, one of Trisso's friends said he wasn't sure Tint was really level 0. Trisso said he was sure because he had seen Tint's blessing book many times and used to laugh at it. But the friend brought up something strange. Tint's throws were always better. When Trisso got a 16 on doubles, Tint got an 18. When Trisso got a 19 on singles, Tint got a 20. If Trisso hit the blue point, Tint hit it too. Tint always did a little better. So the friend asked again if Tint was truly level 0. Even Trisso started to notice how good Tint's throws were. It made sense why others had doubts, but Trisso still believed Tint was level 0. He thought Tint's victory was a gift from the goddess, maybe because she felt sorry for him after he got kicked out of the group. Trisso didn't like the timing and blamed the goddess for helping Tint and causing his loss. At the same time, the goddess was enjoying a nice meal at a fancy restaurant. She really liked the food and thanked Tint for it. For now, it seemed like she had forgotten that she fainted after seeing Tint's anaconda. When she woke up, she kept saying sorry to him while kneeling, just like when they first met. Tint also managed to keep all the rewards for himself, so he saw the first day of leveling up as a success. Later, Esther asked if it was okay for her to keep drinking alcohol. Tint told her she could drink as much as she wanted. She was glad and kept drinking. Tint didn't mind because he thought it might help her forget about the anaconda, but letting her get drunk turned out to be a mistake. Soon, she started throwing up rainbows on the street. Tint gently patted her back while she kept vomiting. He hoped this would help her forget everything that happened that day. While this was happening, a woman with sharp knife-like ears heard someone getting sick nearby. The next day, a woman stood face to face with a giant monster. Her name was Aitana, known by many as the hero's daughter. Her job was clear: fight monsters head-on and defeat them. She was battling near a town at the Temple of the Monkey God, along with her team Group S from the Garden of Diversity. With her at the front were Jan, a halfling, and Layla, a beastman. A little farther back were Daria, an elf, and a group of swordsmen. At the very back stood Nadia, a dwarf, and a group of archers. Aitana glanced behind her. Only 2 people near her were still fighting properly, but even they couldn't do real damage to the monster. The fighters in the middle had backed away, looking more like scared old men than warriors. The dwarves at the back didn't even seem interested in helping. As always, Aitana was the strongest in her group, and it was her job to take down the monster. She held her sword, called Junk. It was made just for her, built from different pieces of scrap metal. Suddenly, the monster let out a loud roar. Many of the other adventurers froze in fear. Aitana thought the roar was silly. She knew it could scare most people and even make them feel like they were about to die. But it didn't scare her at all. She had trained with someone far more terrifying: her father. While the others couldn't move, Aitana saw her chance. This was the perfect moment for her to defeat the monster by herself. Even though Aitana didn't want to, her skill called Instinct kept getting activated. This skill warned her when danger was near, especially if the enemy was stronger than her. The feeling reminded her of the first time it happened, and it annoyed her that she had to rely on a skill just to escape. What made it worse was that the enemy was just a monkey. Still, Aitana rushed forward, ready to defeat the monster. The monkey then gathered magic energy in its cut-off right arm and launched it at her in the shape of fists. Aitana found it frustrating. She hated how monsters kept finding new ways to fight. Instead of throwing 5 fists separately, the monkey could have just formed one big one. That moment reminded her why she disliked monsters so much. She decided to tear off the monkey's other arm. Right then, Layla stepped in and blocked the attack. The magic faded after hitting her shield. Aitana told her to move aside because she wanted to handle the fight on her own, but Layla refused, determined to protect her sister. The monkey somehow understood Layla's words and became angry, but before it could react, something was already coming its way. Jan suddenly appeared and struck the monster many times with her short sword. Aitana told her to go after the weaker enemies instead, but Jan didn't listen. She said her magic swords were urging her to take apart the main monster. At that moment, the monkey went wild. It used its magic to make more fists and sent a bunch of them flying at Jan, but none of the fists hit him because he moved back just in time. Right after that, Daria called out to everyone. She said the monster was getting too strong and that she was almost out of magic. She warned them that getting too close was now dangerous and told them to let the archers take over while everyone else stepped back. Layla told Aitana to move back, but Aitana just pushed her hand away. She said she wasn't joking and still wanted a good fight. Layla tried to stop her, but Aitana rushed toward the monster again. She used her skill called Freezing Flame. Ice shaped like fire came from her sword and stabbed the monster. It froze right away like a popsicle. Just as Aitana was about to finish the monster off, a bunch of arrows suddenly hit it. The monster dropped to the ground, dead. Aitana looked confused. Nadia, standing in the back, said it was a great combo. Aitana got mad and told her not to steal her kill, but she didn't say much after that. She started thinking about her father. He had sent her out on her own to learn from others. She had spent 3 years at the Adventurers Academy. He told her to learn teamwork when she was only 10. She used to lose to demons because she always fought alone. That's why she needed to learn to fight with others. But now she felt like all this was a waste of time. She had tried to join Group S at the Garden of Diversity, but things didn't go well. Most of the experience points from the monsters went to the dwarves who finished the fights. If she had fought alone, she would have kept the points for herself. She hadn't leveled up in 2 weeks because of these team battles. Her father had reached level 100 at the age of 18. Aitana was 16 and only at level 81. It was getting harder to level up as she got stronger. Her stats still improved, so she didn't have to rush, but she really wanted to be better than her father. To do that, she had to pass level 100 in the next 2 years. That goal had become the most important thing in her life. Suddenly, Daria scolded Aitana for being careless. Without her magic, she could have been seriously hurt. But Aitana said everything was fine because she hadn't been hit even once. Daria used to be a strong magic swordsman, but now she stayed away from the front lines. Aitana thought she couldn't learn anything new from her anymore. Then someone spoke up saying Daria shouldn't be so harsh. Aitana had 2 important skills: instinct and attack recovery. Because of those, there was no way she would let her guard down against a monster like that. The person speaking was Saffron, the leader of the Garden of Diversity. Aitana found him strange. Even though he was a male halfling, he looked feminine. Saffron explained that Aitana had to use her skills during the fight. Instinct helped her sense danger, and attack recovery let her heal when she hit something. Although attack recovery was helpful, it also made things harder. Aitana thought risking herself helped her grow stronger, so she didn't understand why the gods gave her skills that made fighting safer. Daria complained that Saffron was going too easy on Aitana. Saffron asked her to calm down. He then asked Aitana if she would finally join the guild for dinner that night. Just then, Layla showed up and hugged Aitana like a protective sister. She said the men at the dinner might look at Aitana the wrong way. Daria quickly told Layla not to talk like that in public since it could hurt the team's image. Still, Daria quietly admitted that Aitana was very attractive. Layla insisted that she wouldn't let anyone else get close to Aitana, not even the sub-captain. Daria exclaimed she was not looking at her lewdly. She just wondered why an elf race, which was supposed to be flat-chested, had huge melons hanging on Aitana. Layla then proudly announced that it was thanks to her touching Aitana a lot, and teasingly told Daria to survive with her flat planes until she found someone to massage her. Daria exclaimed she was not lacking at all. Saffron began to feel annoyed and asked everyone to stop the silly conversation. He reminded Aitana that he was counting on her to come to the dinner. Aitana felt annoyed. To her, the dinners were just for show. She believed the team might be in trouble under Saffron's leadership. She didn't want to waste any more time because her goal was to defeat the Demon Lord, who was a threat to the whole world. But even if she didn't like it, she knew she had to follow orders. Still, she wondered if this was really the right path to take. The whole group went to the guild to report that they had defeated the monkey monster. They also wanted to show off and get more praise from the guild. Since joining the group, Aitana had learned how they cared too much about things like fame, and it frustrated her. Saffron told everyone to take a break and meet later at a restaurant. Aitana felt relieved that they were finally done wasting time. She started thinking about whether she should go fight monsters or join the arena battles. She had been avoiding duels lately, and it seemed like other adventurers were also avoiding real adventures. As she was about to leave, Aitana asked Layla not to follow her. But Layla refused and said that little sisters always follow their older sisters. She even offered to guide Aitana wherever she wanted to go. Aitana found it tiring to talk to her. It annoyed her that Layla, who was only born 3 months earlier, acted like she was the older one. It was hard to avoid Layla because of her animal traits, which made her even more irritating. Aitana didn't like being around her because she was loud, but beastmen were useful in expanding the types of missions they could take, so she couldn't ignore her completely. When Aitana tried to leave again, Daria stopped her. Aitana said she didn't want to hear any more speeches. Daria looked at her and mentioned that something looked bigger again. Aitana quickly covered herself and told Daria not to stare like that. But Daria said she was talking about Aitana's dress, which seemed too small now. She suggested they go shopping for a new one. Aitana said she could just wear regular clothes, but Daria asked if she really planned to wear her old wrinkled tank tops and shorts to dinner. Aitana admitted she was right. Daria warned her that creepy men might stare at her, and for the first time Layla agreed with Daria. She even said that Jan often looked at Aitana through his bangs. Jan blamed his magic swords, saying they made him look at women who dressed that way. Aitana wondered what was wrong with that. Nadia then mentioned that a new store had just opened downtown and suggested they go together so Aitana could buy a new one. Nadia was the girl who had taken Aitana's kill before. Even though she was a dwarf, she acted more feminine than anyone else in the group, which annoyed Aitana. Daria and Layla agreed to go too. Daria asked 2 dwarves to carry their bags, but the dwarves refused. One said he had a date later, and the other didn't like being in crowds. Daria knew they were just making excuses because they didn't want to see Nadia trying on clothes. The 2 were clearly into her. Nadia told Daria to stop, saying they were only close friends. The dwarves blushed and agreed. Layla was impressed by how easily Nadia attracted attention. Just then, someone greeted Layla and Aitana. It was Savant. The girls asked how he was. Savant pointed out they were his former schoolmates and he had graduated at the top of his class. Layla remembered a noble boy like that. Aitana didn't remember him, but since her instinct didn't react, she assumed he wasn't strong. Daria said Savant would be joining their group soon. Savant explained that he hadn't introduced himself earlier because things weren't official yet. He had only come to greet them during dinner. Daria thought he was polite for his age and planned to test him later. Saffron then showed up and greeted Savant. Seeing everyone talking and having fun frustrated Aitana. She didn't want to waste time like them. As she tried to leave the guild, 2 people walked in. Suddenly her instinct kicked in. Something felt very wrong. It was stronger than usual, like electricity running through her body. It was the first time she had felt this way. Her senses led her to one person, Tint. She didn't know who he was, but she could tell right away. This was someone far stronger than anyone she had met before. Aitana looked at him and noticed that he had an average build for a man. He didn't look athletic at all and his gear looked cheap. Layla asked what was wrong and Aitana asked if she knew the man with orange hair. Savant asked if Aitana was interested, but she only asked if he knew the man. He told her his name was Tint and he used to be part of his team. Saffron asked if Tint had left the team. Savant explained that he told Tint to leave because he didn't think Tint was right for the Garden of Diversity. He also shared that Tint now hunted goblins and slimes alone to earn a living. Saffron thought it was a shame since he wanted someone unique like Tint to join them. Then Daria said that in some ways, Tint was even more famous than Saffron. Curious, Saffron asked if Tint was strong. Daria explained that people called Tint God's enemy. He had been an adventurer for a long time, but he was still stuck at level 0. Aitana was shocked when she heard that. Daria said she understood how Tint felt and it was almost a miracle that Savant ever let him join his party. Savant said that helping the weak was something nobles should do, but Aitana couldn't understand why they were saying such things. The feeling she got from Tint was stronger than anything, even stronger than dragons or magical beasts. It was so powerful that not even her father, when she first discovered her powers, gave off that kind of feeling. She couldn't ignore the possibility that Tint was on the same level as her father during his days fighting the Demon King. As Tint walked away, Aitana clicked her tongue in annoyance. Savant tried to ask her to join him for dinner to meet his father, but Aitana ignored him. She told Layla to follow her instead. She said they were going to find Tint. Layla was just happy that Aitana asked her to come along and completely forgot about the dress she was supposed to wear for dinner. While Tint was preparing for his next quest, he asked Esther if she was sure about coming along. Esther seemed excited and said she had to check something for herself that day. Ever since a bad experience in the Goblin's Forest, Esther had become scared of going there. She usually stayed at home, knitting while waiting for Tint to return. Tint often felt worried about leaving her alone almost every day. Before he left, Esther gently wrapped a scarf around his neck. She had made it by hand. Tint thanked her, although it felt too warm for the season. Still, he was happy to see Esther enjoying her vacation. She had been so busy with work before, and now the quiet days were giving her a chance to relax. But even with that, Tint couldn't stop thinking about what Esther wanted to confirm in person. Suddenly, someone called out to him. Tint turned around and was shocked to see Aitana in front of him, along with her sister. He was surprised that a famous adventurer would approach him. His first thought was that she might be trying to take advantage of him. Aitana then asked him a strange question, what he really was. Tint was confused because he didn't exactly know the answer himself. He told her he was just an average adventurer, but Aitana didn't believe him. She seemed to know how strong he had become. Tint was surprised that Aitana had noticed something he hadn't even thought much about. He believed he was only getting lucky during his goblin hunting missions. His kill records looked normal, and he had been careful to control his strength. Even if someone had been watching him, they would have just seen a slightly skilled goblin hunter. He had also made sure not to show his blessings book in public. Tint then nervously asked how Aitana could tell. She said it was her instinct. Tint found it hard to believe that someone could sense another person's strength without proof. He then tried to leave, saying her guess might be wrong. Aitana asked Tint to wait and wanted to see his blessings book. Tint was shocked and didn't know what to say. Layla said Aitana was being rude because the blessings book had private information that adventurers usually didn't share with others. Tint agreed with Layla and said he couldn't show it, but Aitana didn't listen. She still wanted to see it and said that if Tint was really a level 0 adventurer, there shouldn't be anything in the book that would be a problem. Aitana stepped closer to Tint, trying to pressure him. This made Tint uncomfortable and distracted. He noticed Layla staring angrily at Aitana, so he looked away and turned to Esther instead. To his surprise, Esther also told him to show the book. Tint saw something different in Esther's eyes, something that made him feel like he could trust her, even though that wasn't normal for her. Because a goddess had asked, he didn't feel like he could refuse. So he took out his blessings book. Aitana quickly grabbed it and looked through the pages. She saw that Tint really was weak. His level was 0, and his stats were very low. Now she understood why her special sense had been acting up. Layla apologized for the trouble her sister caused and wished Tint good luck on his journey. Tint looked at Esther, confused. Esther explained that he was still level 2198, and that she had only tricked the blessings book to make it show he was level 0. Tint was surprised, but Esther said that forging papers like that was normal in shady companies. Because of her, Tint was able to fool everyone. If Aitana found out he defeated 50 goblins in one day, or that he won the knife-throwing contest, she would definitely start to get suspicious. Tint knew he had to be more careful from now on. Tint and Esther finally reached Goblin's Forest. Esther said he was going deeper into the forest, but Tint couldn't focus because he knew Aitana and Layla were secretly following and watching him. If he were really level 0, he wouldn't have noticed them. But now, he could sense things more easily. He remembered that catfolk like Layla had sharp hearing, so it was better not to talk about being followed. It would also cause problems if they found out that someone at level 0 could sense them. Suddenly goblins appeared and Esther screamed for help, thinking they were going to attack her. Tint was actually glad she reacted like that because it made her seem like a normal person, not a goddess. He decided to act scared too, pretending he couldn't fight goblins alone. He thought this would make him look like a true level 0 adventurer. But then Esther asked what he meant, since he had just defeated 50 goblins the other day. Tint quickly shouted loudly to cover up her words and said that the goblins were only defeated by accident because of a rock slide. He insisted he couldn't beat a goblin on his own. Esther called him a liar. Tint began to panic. He couldn't take the chance of being exposed. He suddenly hugged Esther tightly and whispered in her ear that they were being followed. But the goddess looked too flustered to understand him clearly. Tint kept apologizing, saying he knew he made her feel unsure because he was a weak adventurer with no future. The goblins looked confused, wondering what the two were doing. Tint then spoke in a serious voice and told Esther he would risk his life to protect her. Even though he was only pretending, Esther looked like she was starting to fall for him. Tint hoped she understood what he was trying to say. Now all he had to do was play his role as a weak level 0 while dealing with the goblins. Tint stood still while a goblin ran toward him. He watched closely, then dodged the attack at the last moment, pretending he almost got hit. Esther looked worried, and Tint was glad because her acting looked real. The goblins got more frustrated and kept attacking, but Tint kept dodging while pretending to be nervous. After waiting for the right moment, Tint swung his sword and hit one of the goblins. The goblin fell and Tint smiled. Esther joined him in celebrating. Tint felt proud that they were doing a good job acting like a weak, low-level party. Then, one of the goblins suddenly punched him. Tint didn't dodge this time. He let the goblin hit him in the stomach on purpose. Esther looked scared as Tint acted like he was in pain and stumbling around. Tint knew that many adventurers didn't fully understand what the durability stat meant. It just showed how much damage someone could take. It didn't mean they wouldn't feel pain. But since Tint had high durability, he could act like he was badly hurt without actually being in danger. Still, he didn't want Esther to worry anymore, so he decided to finish the fight. He stabbed the goblin and it fell to the ground. Right after that, Esther ran to him and hugged him while crying. Tint warned her that he was covered in goblin blood, but she didn't care. She said she was scared because she didn't know what she would do if Tint had died. Tint thanked her and thought she had acted really well. Even if it was just part of the plan, it felt real to him. He hoped the two girls watching them felt the same way. Layla couldn't believe someone was getting emotional over beating just 2 goblins. It made her feel a bit jealous that someone with no experience could be so relaxed. She told Aitana that Tint was really a level 0 and it wasn't worth their time to follow him. But Aitana believed Tint was only pretending to fool them. Layla reminded her that Tint's blessings book clearly showed he was level 0. Aitana explained that the blessings book could be faked using magic. Layla then asked why Tint would go so far to pretend. He had been a level 0 for 3 years and even got a nickname that embarrassed him. She wondered if there was any reason he would want to hide his true strength. Aitana didn't really know why, but her instincts told her that Tint was strong. Layla thought Aitana was just having another one of her off days, especially since Aitana had confused her instinct skill with her gut feelings in the past. But Aitana said this time felt completely different. She said it felt like lightning had hit her body. For some reason, hearing that made Layla feel uneasy. Layla didn't want to ask, but she did anyway. She wondered if it was love at first sight. Aitana didn't understand what she meant by that. Layla tried to explain that maybe she had fallen in love with Tint the moment she saw him, but Aitana didn't get it. She couldn't understand how someone could fall in love just by looking at someone. In fact, she didn't even understand what it felt like to like someone. For Aitana, life was about getting stronger. She only saw people as useful or not, and that worked fine for her so far. Still, Layla felt a little better after hearing all that, like a real sister should. Aitana, on the other hand, didn't get why Layla was the one feeling better. For now, Layla suggested that she should go shopping with Daria. She pointed out that Aitana didn't really have any friends, and that was starting to worry her. But Layla said men were off limits. She believed it was normal for men and women to be friends, but things were different when the woman looked like Aitana, who had silver hair and a striking figure. Even Layla, her sister, had feelings for her that went beyond family. Aitana said friends weren't important for getting stronger. In fact, she believed they only made someone weaker. But Layla disagreed. She believed that having connections with others could make someone even stronger. Just then, someone nearby gave a creepy smile, and Aitana felt that something was wrong. She told Layla to go home first. Layla asked what was happening, but Aitana warned her not to follow. She said things could get dangerous. As Aitana ran, she thought about instincts. She believed there were different kinds. When she met someone strong, it felt like electricity ran through her body. When she sensed danger, it usually felt like something was lightly touching her heart. But now, it felt much worse, like her heart was being squeezed tightly. When Aitana felt danger like this, it usually meant an enemy was focusing on her. That meant someone had probably noticed her already. Tint, the person she had been with earlier, still hadn't realized anything. He was still taking care of the girl with him. That could only mean one thing. There was another monster in the forest. Aitana began to wonder if she was the target. She remembered what her father once told her, to always protect her own life first. He said a fight where she might die wasn't worth it. If she died, she couldn't become stronger. But Aitana also knew something else. Records showed that fighting in life and death situations helped people grow faster than fighting safe battles. In fact, her father himself had faced many dangerous fights when he was younger than she was now. That's how he reached level 100 by the age of 18. If Aitana never pushed herself to the limit, she knew she'd never be able to surpass him. Right now, she felt sorry. She was about to break the promise she made to her father. Aitana soon reached a spot she thought was good enough. The place was quiet and hidden, and it could protect her from attacks coming from far away. But then, she felt a stronger chill. The feeling of danger was getting clearer and more intense. She realized that a scary monster was really watching her. Still, she didn't know where it was, or if it could attack from a distance. As the feeling grew stronger, Aitana had no choice but to use her skill. She chose to stay connected to the electricity around her so she could sense what was coming. Then a cold voice suddenly spoke. It was surprised to see an elf, and even said it liked how Aitana looked. Aitana quickly turned her body and swung her sword toward the voice, trying to strike whoever was behind her. But she hit nothing. Instead, she saw a girl calmly sitting on her sword. When Aitana got a better look, she realized the girl was a demon. Without wasting time, Aitana used her freezing flames to attack. But the demon girl wasn't hurt at all and gently landed on a nearby rock. With the heavy pressure she felt and the horns on the girl's head, Aitana was sure she was facing a real demon. What confused her most was why a demon would be in the goblin's forest. But what truly shocked her was the sword the demon girl was holding. The moment Aitana saw it, chills ran down her spine. It was her father's sword. Seeing Aitana's reaction, the demon girl smiled. In a flashback, the demon girl named Hizumi remembered something her father once told her. He said he had gained everything, but there was still one thing that stained his life. Back then, Hizumi didn't really understand what he meant. She thought it must be amazing to have everything you ever wanted. After her father died, Hizumi became the leader of the powerful Trantor family in the demon realm. She gained enough power to match her new title. Just like her father, she could say she had everything. But soon, she realized that her life felt empty and boring. One day, a demon knelt before her, begging for help. He was one of those who had once stood against her. Hizumi didn't care much, but since it might be interesting, she allowed him into her castle. She asked what kind of help he wanted. The demon begged her to save his daughter, who looked like she was in pain. Using her magic, Hizumi made the father absorb his daughter's life energy. It kept him alive, but it also meant his daughter would die. Hizumi thought the scene might amuse her. Two people shouting at each other, fighting to survive. But instead, what she saw touched her. The daughter was willing to die for her father, and the father begged to trade his life to save hers. The daughter even called her father a fool and told him to live because he was more important to the demon realm. Hearing them cry and argue, Hizumi gave up. She called their bond amazing and decided to help. She tapped the daughter on the head and pulled her out from her father's back, saving them both. The two hugged each other with joy. But then, the daughter suddenly flinched in pain. The father asked what was wrong. The daughter said it felt like she bumped into something, but then her stomach started to twist. The father got worried and asked again. Suddenly, the daughter began bleeding from everywhere and something started to come out of her chest. She cried out in pain. The father asked Hizumi what she had done. Hizumi didn't answer. The father shouted at her, but then everything went silent. His daughter, now fully changed into a magical beast, bit off his head. Hizumi watched the daughter eat her own father. Then she said it was boring. After her father died, Hizumi once looked at herself in the mirror and finally understood what he had meant by his last words. She realized she might end up dying from boredom just like he did. She thought about trying to fight off the boredom, but she believed it wasn't her fault. People around her were just too boring. She had hoped her enemies would put up a fight, but they only shook in fear and begged for mercy when they faced her. Hizumi was disappointed. She couldn't believe they would die without even giving her one last bit of excitement. Then something came to her mind. She remembered a human who had come to her castle 50 years ago. He had been brave and stood up to all the demons using strange fire magic. He had actually managed to entertain her when she was younger. That was why she let him go. She had listened to his begging and gave him mercy instead of killing him. She remembered he was called a hero or something like that. She didn't recall his name, but she did remember cutting off his arms to take his sword. That sword could be used to cast a summoning spell. If she used it, she might be able to bring the hero back to her castle, and that would be a great way to pass the time. But Hizumi didn't remember where she had left the sword. After searching through her storage, she finally found a large sword. It was the same one the hero had when she took his arms. She couldn't remember his name, but it felt like everything had just happened yesterday. Then Hizumi realized something else. She hadn't thought about how short human lives were. Most of them only lived around 70 years. The hero might already be dead or too old to fight. Just when Hizumi thought everything was over, she realized the hero might have had a child. There was a good chance the child could also use fire magic. She saw that the hero's sword still had blood on it. With summoning magic, Hizumi could bring back someone if she had their blood. But if she could smell or taste the blood, she might be able to track down the hero's child. She believed the child had probably inherited the hero's bravery and fire powers. That meant they could be fun to deal with. Since her original plan had been cancelled, Hizumi made a new one. She would go after the hero's child instead. She imagined how sad the hero would be if his sword's final victim turned out to be his own kid. But there was a problem, and Hizumi called herself foolish for not thinking of it sooner. She didn't know how to find the child because the human world was full of the awful presence known as God. As a noble demon, she couldn't stand being near something so disgusting. She thought maybe she could summon the father to lure the child in, but she doubted a kid would care enough to help an old dying man. The whole idea sounded like too much work. Just then, one of her demon maids told her not to stress herself out. Hizumi scolded the maid, Ulrika, for reading her mind. She even thought about fighting Ulrika for fun, but didn't want to lose a useful servant. So she asked what was going on. Ulrika told her that God's barrier was getting weaker. Hizumi was surprised and wondered if something was cleaning up the corruption. Ulrika said it looked that way and, since things had been quiet lately, suggested that Hizumi take a walk. Hizumi thought about it. The human world was like a giant trash pile to her. If the hero's child turned out to be a letdown, she could use that as an excuse to take out her anger on humanity. Wiping out a bunch of humans sounded like a fun way to blow off steam. And if she spared the child, she could make them clean up the mess afterward. She had heard that humans couldn't survive on their own and depended a lot on each other. That made things even more interesting. So Hizumi decided to visit the human world and check out her new toy. Now, in the present, Hizumi looked down at Aitana and wondered if this child would be fun to play with. Aitana stood frozen. She clearly recognized the sword. It was real. It was the hero's sword. 50 years ago, her father had been ordered by the Emperor to invade the demon realm. He barely survived the mission. He came back with one arm missing, and without his sword. Aitana couldn't spend time thinking about the past now. The enemy was standing right in front of her, but she couldn't help herself. She asked the demon girl if she had fought a hero named Bernhardt, and if her name was Hizumi. When Hizumi heard the name Bernhardt, she paused for a moment. Now that Aitana had said it, she remembered. That was the name of the man who fought her. Aitana couldn't believe Hizumi had forgotten her father's name. She told her not to joke because her father never forgot Hizumi. He spoke her name every night, haunted by nightmares. Hizumi then guessed that Aitana was Bernhardt's daughter. Aitana snapped back, asking what if she was. Hizumi said she had come just to see her. She said she suddenly remembered Bernhardt's desperate cries for mercy. Feelings of guilt, which she thought were gone, started to rise inside her again. As an apology, she said she would give Aitana a chance to get revenge. She told Aitana to go ahead and attack. She wouldn't defend herself. Aitana felt frustrated, but she remembered what her father had told her, not to fall for tricks. So she took the chance to activate her skill. She knew this enemy was even stronger than her father. If she didn't give it her all, she wouldn't stand a chance. Watching Aitana made Hizumi feel disappointed. Aitana said she couldn't stay calm while facing someone who had played with her father's life. Hizumi asked if she was scared. Aitana didn't feel scared. She just remembered her father's words. Never fight demons without his permission. Even though she had broken that promise by coming here, she still ended up following his advice and ran away. Hizumi complained that Aitana was just stalling, waiting for someone else to show up. Aitana didn't understand what she meant until Layla landed on the ground with a powerful strike. She didn't wait a second and charged straight at Hizumi. The older sister had come to protect her younger one. That is the end of the recap at Chapter 9. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.